there's a push, an adaptation for comfort and safety. And so whenever we get to the next edge, our upper limit, there's going to be massive resistance before we push into it. The evolution, the next level is, it just comes back to our programming. Like our hardware and our software in our brain is meant for one thing: keep us safe. But we no longer live in a society where safety is taken care of for the most part, right? There's not a tribe that's going to come over the hill for most of us and kill us tomorrow. And so we haven't adapted yet our software to actually adapt to the modern world. In the modern world, the people who actually win, the people who have an amazing life, are the people who are not seeking comfort and safety, but is seeking expansion and growth. And there's studies that show when you have a growth mindset, you're more positive in life. You enjoy life more. It's all of these things. But we have to recognize and realize that within us, there's a push, an adaptation for comfort and safety. And so whenever we get to the next edge, our upper limit, there's going to be massive resistance before we push into it. And it was funny, I had a conversation with one of my clients today, and he was right on that edge. Super successful guy, lives in Europe, runs a great business, and he's just starting to get to the edge of stepping into a higher level. And his pattern was, oh, I'm not going to do any of this. I'm going to stop coaching with him. I'm not going to move to this country I want to move to. It was like from the top to, boom, I'm back in. I'm small again. This is too much for me. This is too much tension. And that's one of the most powerful things in this, is recognizing that whenever we get to the top of the next level, all we're actually experiencing in our body is tension. You want to go talk to that pretty girl? What's preventing you from going and doing that is the tension you feel in your stomach, the nervousness in your hands, the shaking, right? And so one of the things I've talked about is, like, for a man to live an incredible life, he has to be comfortable with one word, and that's tension. That is the word he has to become comfortable with. The tension of doing the scary thing, the tension of getting up and speaking, of talking to the girl. The more he becomes comfortable with that feeling in his body, the more he can be expansive and do bigger and bigger things.
I love that. How come in many places in the West, we're both from, there's often been a lot of maybe teaching and education that says that masculinity is bad, or just a strong man is bad. And I'm trying to phrase this in a way that also plays a devil's advocate for the other side, but just in the sense is why is it that we've received so much education that maybe pushes a man away from stepping close to this edge, or just stepping into these leadership positions, or even just having a good outlet for violence or anger, which is a natural emotion, and then putting it towards something? Why do you think we've received messages, or where do you think that those have come from?
Yeah. Great question. I think it's just because there's been a lack of strong men, and the masculinity that we've seen portrayed is actually from weak people. And so, a weak man lashes out in his masculinity with anger and intimidation to everyone. And it's like that's what we've seen. So women, or even other men, perceive that anger, which is an emotion that we should feel and release, is bad, because whenever we've seen it, it's usually a man doing it to women and children, or a man doing it to weaker men. Where if you look at a tribal society, we have the ability to unleash that, to show that. You and I go out into the forest and hunt, and at some points we're going to need our anger to carry back that pig for 2 marathons, right? We're going to need that frustration. We're going to need those emotions. And I think what we've seen is weak masculinity dominate in a society. And then that's made masculinity as a whole look like it's something we don't want. But the truth is, when shit goes down, everyone turns to the most masculine person in that situation. The one who is most grounded, the one who is most clear and most decisive, is the person who we turn to. And so the Native Americans had a beautiful thing. I think you might know this as well. We read some of the same books on them. But they had this thing where they had a peacetime leader and a wartime leader. And there was a very different distinction on who led the tribe during a certain time. And I think as men, we need to understand what our season in our own life is. And too many men in the Western world, they lead their entire life as peacetime. But there's certain times in their life when the wartime leader needs to show up. And he shows up with a decisiveness, a ruthlessness, a firmness, an ability to attack rather than just defend. And so I think that's the masculinity that the West has seen. It's weak men manipulating or domineering weaker people than them. And that's the pushback, in my opinion. How about you? Do you have perspective on that as well?
I think it nails it. I think it really is spot on with, we've moved away from necessarily needing a very, very strong masculine man because safety has just been built around, and speaking in our context in the West, is that there's no real threats, like you said, is that no one's going to come over the hill and attack us, and there's no, the new frontier is no longer something that is physical for us to cross. It's everything that's internal. Yes. So
wow, powerful.
Yeah, for us to go on this new level is confronting maybe these emotions that are real and they exist, which is anger and frustration and like all these things that should be expressed in some healthy way, because otherwise they will come out in negative circumstances.
Suppression.
Yeah, yeah, and like it's so important to release it. And I'm just saying this off of this last week of doing the boxing, even, is that the two classes that I've done have been such a healthy outlet of just, okay, I feel so much more grounded and relaxed. And there's something I even noticed with, after doing one of the classes, is driving around here can be very intense with all of the traffic.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane. And
motorcycles everywhere, dogs running across the street.
At any point, the dogs never look either. They just go right across. So the opportunity for any driving route to turn into something that could be a crash or collision is very, very high. So like I noticed myself being so much more relaxed in that situation, just as like a day-to-day thing, is like having an outlet for where I can go and express this anger. Is I feel so much more calm and relaxed in these other places. And so I think that because there's isn't a need for this strong man is where now men have started to lose sight of what is natural to them, which is violence is a natural thing, or maybe anger, but a thing inside of you that is like the tension that you're saying that should just be expressed and outward, so you don't hold it in. But no longer knowing where to express that, no longer knowing where to have that be channeled, has turned men into confused and lost and
in going more inward and not a good way, right? Because when you talk about, just as much as like dancing for a little girl is a part of her expression, violence is a part of an expression for young kids. I have young nephews, and like they just wrestle. No one taught them how to do it. No one showed them. They're wrestling and punching and kicking, and that's a natural expression for them. And I think the body is the most powerful and intelligent piece of hardware in the world. And if that's the natural expression, to let those emotions out as a child, but then we stop as adults, right? That's still in there. We're still having things happen to us that we don't like. We're still having negative experiences, but we're not actually expressing that. And ultimately, that's the scariest thing, is when we have a society that hides that and pushes that down, because we're limiting the real, true expression. And just like you said, after these classes, you feel calmer, more at peace, more centered, more connected to yourself. So I agree. I think it's really powerful, and it does take courage. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, it does take courage to be in the ring, to be in combat, to be facing a man. And I love it. There's like a study, you've probably seen this before, but like the average man over perceives his ability to fight by like 6,400% or something.
Every man can take on a grizzly bear.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that, because there's nothing that humbles you more than going to a place of combat and seeing your level. Seeing where you're really at.
Yeah, getting punched in the face and then thinking, it's a very nice thing. But then it's cool, because it's like, okay, hey, this is, and I think when that happens, when you get hit in the face, is also a very well-known feeling. I think between both genders, but definitely for men, is like when you get hit in the face, then it's like, okay, I have purpose. Yep. I have to get up, and I will get up. Is that I've been beaten down, and now I will stand back up and face Goliath. I am David, and I'm proud of being that. So when you step into that realm of just getting your ass beat, you're like, fuck it, dude, we're going again.
Yes.
So,
And that's what brings
yeah.
out the best in most people is when you are down and out and have to make that decision. I think a lot of the modern society is like preventing people from ever feeling down and out. And you know in your own journey of life, and I know in my own journey, that the down and out times were the times that built the roots for me to grow to the highest of heights. And so actually, if we can start to cultivate that in our life, have more moments when we do get our ass kicked, metaphorically or actually physically, and then be able to overcome that. And I think that's what even we were talking about earlier about putting yourself in the fire, doing things you're scared to do, taking risks, doing things before you're ready to do it. The more you do that, the more you're increasing your chances of being down and out and beat up. And then having to go into yourself and say, I got it. Let's go. I got it. Let's go. And you said something really powerful earlier too. You talked about trust. Like ultimately everything that I believe we do is we're building our relationship with ourselves. And the foundation of our relationship with ourselves is trust. And if you never put your relationship to the test, if you never actually see what you're made of, you never have the ability to trust, to see that you can trust yourself. And as we deepen that relationship, it changes our confidence. It changes our aura, as people say these days. You know, it changes the way women feel around you or other people feel around you because they know there's a trust you have in yourself.
Yeah, and it really expands as soon as you do that. It's crazy. This whole week has been different for me.
Yeah.
Just off of the weekend and the boxing classes, and in that stage of when you are low and when you are when you have been beaten, do you have any advice for folks going through that stage? Like what processes or things can someone do to, I guess, pull themselves out of that situation?
Well, it's so funny because there's always a new stage and new levels of difficulty. And like I have clients now where, you know, I have a client who's getting in trouble with a bad business partner who now there's FBI dealing with him. And it's like a whole level that's such a different level of frustration and fear and all these things. And ultimately, I think if you can make the reframe that every situation you are in is actually a situation that is given to you for you to learn or evolve in some way, that is the ultimate gift. In the vision, I often talk about a client who used to be a special forces guy, and he was really going through it in his business. And this vision came to me when him and I were coaching. It was just him on the front of this Viking ship. He kind of looks like a Viking. On the front of this Viking ship, they're going to war. There's lightning, there's thunder, there's rain, and he's scared. He doesn't know if his ship is going to sink, his business is going to sink. And I said, you know, get up there on the front of the boat, and I just want you to envision yourself looking up at the sky, looking up at God and say, give me more. Is that the best you can give me? Is that the best you can do? Give me more. I can handle it. And I think that frame, especially for a man, it works for women as well, but to say, I'm going through it, put more weight on my back. Because this moment is only going to deepen my story and trust in myself and who I am and what I can handle. And I think that's the ultimate goal, is recognizing that it's not about getting out of the bad times. It's about recognizing who you were in the bad times and how you approached the bad times rather than how quickly you got out of them. Because that builds the respect.
Is that all you got?
Yeah. Is that all you got?
All you got?
Yeah.
It's
you
incredible.
Just punched me in the face. Is that all you got? Give me more. And that philosophy creates the worst moments in your life and turns them into joyful play.